Namaskar and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology, Debunking Mythology. Sat means truth, Logos means a science or study. Satology means a science of truth or study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology. Myth means fake lie imagination, and mythology means a science of fake lie imagination or study of fake lie or imagination. It has done an immense damage to our society, and today's topic is exactly connecting that through Saraswati river timelines and appearance and disappearance. Now, one of the things which is always there, speaking lie through the teeth, and then very confidently saying it, and then offering little or no proofs for the claim. And that is the typical Western academic. You ask them any question, you might be kicked out of the class, or you might be banned from the program, or the worst will be kicked out of the university. So we have very special guest, great friend, a Muni, researcher, and a Rishi, both three. Some people say Rushi or Rishi. Listen to me. Now, every language has different pronunciations or different letters. But we are still, if you understand what I'm saying, that ends the controversy over there. So Sanskrit is Ri and Ru are two different words in Sanskrit. So without delay, let us welcome Shri Nilesh Oak.
Namaskar Aditya ji. And the comment that you get for Rishi versus Rishi, I get it all the time. Kripa and Krupa. I say Krupa, and then somebody will say, isn't it Kripa? And I'm saying, well, let's not fight on it. But if you're truly looking for a Sanskrit word, then it is Krupa and not Kripa. Yeah. But we can go with either. Yeah. As long as you understand what I'm trying to say, just like what you said.
Exactly. And also Marathi language is more closer to Sanskrit than Hindi. So the pronunciations are purer in Marathi language. And also Telugu is also 80% Sanskrit. So whenever you refer to those languages, then Ri and Ru are two distinct letters.
Right.
And so anyway, it doesn't change the Sanskrit Varnamala. As long as you get the point, it's all good. And today we also talking the baseless, like the claims, very confident claims, which, confidence is a virtue, but try to be self-confident. Try to be aware of your own Atman, Atma, and that is a deeper sense of confidence platform. What you would like to add anything to that, Rishi?
No, you said it. I think as we get into today, we will continue from our last time, Sattva Raja Tama,
yes.
of research as it applies to River Saraswati.
Right.
And if sometimes people wonder, like, okay, so how long we need to talk River Saraswati? Well, the answer is very simple, until people understand it. I mean, Bhagavad Gita lecture is there every day, and the mantra, we take the same mantra and chant it every time, multiple times, because we want to have the effect on our inner self. So we will do it until then. So I don't want to add anything unless you have, and I'll just jump into the presentation.
Yes.
Okay, so so we did this. So I want to move through first few slides faster. But this time, Aditya ji, what I did, I said, well, last time we jumped into this whole agenda-driven claims, academic nonsense about the existence of River Saraswati, the antiquity of River Saraswati, the location of River Saraswati, its connection with Rigveda, its connection with Mahabharata, its connection with Ramayana, its connection with Indian civilization. Because to deny all of this, for which the kind of evidence that exists, the empirical scientific evidence exists, I don't think any other place, any other civilization around the world has evidence that comes anywhere close to the evidence of River Saraswati or Rigveda, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and ancient Indian narratives. In spite of that, the utter agenda-driven diatribes that are run through the academia, and you mentioned Western academia, of course, Western academia, and their lack is in India. So this is a mindset. It's even when we say Western, it's like a left versus right. Many people confuse this. So the left in the American sense, I mean, not even going into good or bad, The point is that is not the left in India.
That's
The
right.
same left wing behaves very differently in India. Okay, so I mean, we'll not go into that. My point is, therefore, I mean, this is like turning the truth upside down, and we will see why that happens. So, before even get into that controversial thing, I thought I will define this, and actually, one of my friend helped me define it into two parts. Now, if you think of a truth, as most of us know, or at least we realize once we actually know the truth, that truth is actually simple and it's easy to understand. It's not that difficult to understand. But we create this deliberate maya, on top of it to confuse ourselves. And we choose to be confused. Okay. So the knowledge is always there, but we have to use our viveka to use the proper tools, proper methodology, and that is that sattva raja tama balance.
Yes.
So I'm going to split this into part one. I'll tell you, Aditya ji, how simple, how easy, and how short the part one can be, which is to answer the question: what happened to River Saraswati? What happened to? That's the most important word, to Saraswati, because today it doesn't exist. We know that. And therefore, the people who are even worse than Charvak, because Charvak also believes in the Pratyaksha. But these are academics, especially academics in humanities and these social studies are like, don't even have a basics of logic or scientific acumen. So there, and then they have this very vicious agenda. I mean, just see what a lethal combination it is. So I'll get to that, but I'll tell you what happened to River Saraswati, just a factual one. And actually, the story is very, very simple. Actually, I drew this. Somebody suggested to me, and I drew it. So I'm going to show you that. If you go back, now this is based on the evidence, right? Based on the evidence. This is a Blinkhorn paper, 2020. If you go back 172,000 years, close to 200,000, 2 lakhs years, what you find, what you see in the picture is how Saraswati was. There was a Shotudri coming from the north, Yamuna branch, or Yamuna coming from the south. There are many middle small rivers coming from the area of Kurukshetra. That was also called Saraswati there, and they all together forming the grandest river of India. That's River Saraswati. Now, something happened. Actually, I'll show you in the presentation what happened, but without going into why it happened, because we can only conjecture it. But definitely what we know is that around 70,000 years, 75,000 years, 70,000 BC, around that time, this whole paths, the paleo channels of Saraswati, they shifted northwards, like north direction and northwest direction. And I'm going to show that in the map. Okay, so this is just a simple story. So how long before 172,000 years ago Saraswati is flowing? We don't know. But we do know that it was flowing for a very long time before 172,000. We just don't have evidence, so we are not going to go there. It's like a pramana tashyartha pratipatte. We need evidence to talk about whatever we want to claim. We don't have evidence. We do have evidence that it definitely existed, and I'll show that to you, but don't know the timing. Now, it shifted around 70,000 years to in the northwest direction. So that's the first simple truth about River Saraswati. We are not talking of 7,000 years, and we are not talking of 700 years. No, we are talking of 200,000 years and 100,000 years, 170,000, 70,000 years. Now, Aditya ji, you will love this. This is what I'm going to say next, why this transition would have happened around 70,000 years ago. This is my conjecture. This is the first time I'm making it, and first time I'm making it on your Sattology show. Now, this remains to be tested, validated, verified as people do more research. Nobody has said this. Nobody has tried to validate it. I am claiming it for the first time today. Do you recognize what is there on the left side?
Yes, the island and then
You're seeing the lake and island, right? It is on the island of it. Is the whole. This one looks like an island, the lake and an island in between, but that itself is on the island of Sumatra of Indonesia,
wow.
and this is known as Lake Toba. There was a huge explosion, like the the biggest explosion that we know in last 100,000 years. That is Lake Toba, or now it is lake. That time it was a Toba mountain, you can say. Toba explosion that happened, and it just spew out millions and billions of tons of ash around from that area to around the world, but definitely the India and so on. I'm saying that was a very significant geological event. Again, I want to be careful. I'm conjecturing it. I'm not insisting, I'm not asserting that this is exactly led, the Toba explosion led to this transfer. The reason I'm conjecturing is because this is a geological switch, and it did happen around 70,000 years. That evidence is very clear. And the big event that one can think of that happened to be perfectly matching with this is that Toba explosion. We don't have to think beyond that. But this is the first time I'm making this conjecture and making it on your show. This particular show can become a very important one, say 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, 100 years down the road, 300 years down the road, when somebody actually finally, if successful, makes a connection of Toba explosion with this shift of Saraswati from further southeast towards northwest. Okay. I made it actually complicated. It doesn't need to be complicated. It simply said it moves. Saraswati is moving in the northwest direction overall, the physical path. Now let's look at what happened between 70,000 to 50,000 BC. That is a post-Toba. Saraswati is the grandest river of India, ancient India during this time. Same makeup. Shatudri on one side, Yamuna on the other side, many rivers from the Kurukshetra region in the middle, and a grand Saraswati going from all the way from the high mountains to the ocean. Giribhya a Samudra. Okay. Now come to 50,000 and 40,000 BC. Yamuna, again, these are some of the tectonic shifts, fault lines happening in the Himalayas and whatnot. Yamuna switched its course and it no longer continued with Saraswati. Now, some of its distributaries might be feeding water to Saraswati, but a significant portion, the mainstream Yamuna, shifted eastward, southward, and eastward instead of a westward, and now started meeting Ganga. So this is what happened, 50,000, 40,000. This is very important to understand as a Sat, the Satya, out of Sattology. If you want to understand the dogma, the twisted, the rhetorical research, the deliberate fraud, but you need to understand the truth to know the context. Okay, so Yamuna separated. Let's move forward. Then what happened is 40,000 BC, the time clock is running. If you look at the geological hydrology data around 20,000 BC, just for simplicity, that was the time of the last glacial maximum, which is to say as far as the northern hemisphere and of course southern hemisphere too, much of the water became landlocked. The temperatures were cooler. It did not affect India. Like India was not freezing. India had a wonderful civilization going on. But the point is, that is the time we actually have evidence how beautiful it matches, that the amount of water into these rivers actually went down by 20,000 BCE. And more than likely, it is due to the last glacial maximum because much of the water is actually locked into glaciers. Okay, and it's not melting. They are more rather accumulating. So that's happening around 20,000 BC. Okay, now fast forward, come to 13,000 BC. So Yamuna has gone in this direction. Now in 13,000 BC, again, a very wonderful data from IIT Kanpur. What it shows is that Shatudri or Satlaj that was coming straight down and meeting Saraswati, as I showed before, now it sharply turned westward. Instead of coming south straight, it sharply turned westward near Ropar or Rupanagar in Punjab and started flowing westward. Okay, what we are talking here is a pratyaksha and anumana. We are looking at the hard empirical evidence, and then we are using the scientific acumen, logical reasoning, and background knowledge to draw these inferences. I'll also show how actually the research is done, okay, in a very simple fashion. That's it. Okay, so like then what happened after 13,000 BC? Then remember, we have the younger Dryas, sometime around like a 12,000 years ago. So you can say 11,000 BC to say 9,000 BC, somewhere in that region. Again, there was a local cold event. Okay, and so during that time also the waters went down further, just like that LGM thing. But now remember, Shatudri is no longer feeding the waters to Saraswati. Yamuna is not feeding the waters. So this is possibly the time by which the Vinashan actually came into existence. Again, this is a conjecture, but good reason to assume that that is the case. Now comes the time of Mahabharata, 7,500 years ago. Now, interestingly, if you read the descriptions of the Mahabharata, and I'll tell you why, how this becomes such a rich evidence, just amazing. I'm going to describe that in a few minutes. So now we have empirical hard evidence from geology, hydrology, whatnot, but we are also now connecting it with the ancient narratives. Now, Mahabharata has 100 plus descriptions of river Saraswati. Now that happened 7,000, only 7,500 years ago, when Shatudri is not feeding the waters, Yamuna is not feeding the waters. But there are descriptions in Mahabharata where copious quantity of water is flowing through Saraswati. And what's the secret of that? We will get into our explanation. That was the intensification of a monsoon from 7,000 BC to 4,500 BC. And after that, in a very fast pace, Saraswati started drying completely. So by 4,500 BC, it began, and maybe within 1,000 years, 1,500 years, by 3,000 BC, it was dry. And of course, then the other waters, the monsoon waters were flowing, periodically they were flowing. But the Grand Saraswati was gone. In fact, Grand Saraswati was gone 20,000 years ago, 20,000 BC. That's the story. Part one, done. Now, I took longer. I could have done it even shorter. Just wanted to give rich explanation around it. Okay, now comes this, the Rajasic and Tamasic agenda. What happened with river Saraswati? So Aditya, do you see the difference? What happened to river Saraswati? Hey, that is the forces of the nature. But what happened with river Saraswati? So you give something into the hands of human beings, and if their intellect is not in a proper place, they can destroy the whole thing. There is a saying about, in the biology world, they said, what will happen if human beings, just a hypothetical thought experiment, if human beings are removed, all human beings are removed from the earth for say 5 years or 50 years. And the answer is, the earth would recover from all the stresses, environmental stresses it is going through, and many of the species, which are on the verge of being extinct, will actually start flourishing, and it would be a very beautiful place. So the human intellect, it can, depending on how you use it, and that's why the Sattva, Raja, Tama is very important. Sattva will do good, Raja will do a mixture, and Tama will actually lead to destruction.
We already saw that in the pandemic, when we were quarantined, the plants and birds. I saw the birds which I never saw in San Diego before.
Because we were in the quarantine, right?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. And that's what they're saying. The same thing for butterflies and honeybees and bees of all kinds. Bees are dying because of the agrochemicals and agro insecticides and whatnot. But let's go. So what happened with river Saraswati? Last time we did it, certain portion. So I'm going to go fast. So anti-India narratives with respect to river Saraswati. Then I'll talk about pro-India narratives, but also show you how it is a mixed bag. Okay, so their intention may be right, but still they make many erroneous claims, and we will see why they make erroneous claims. Again, it has to do with lack of scientific acumen, lack of logical reasoning, and lack of background knowledge. Then why geology evidence, what actually the evidence says about river Saraswati. I gave you a highlight in a part one, okay? But we'll go look at some very fascinating details and how this research is done. If we have a geologist, I know we have many yoga teachers and Olympic medalists today, but if we have a geologist, they are going to love this stuff also. And if you are not a geologist, you're going to love it because you're going to learn about geology. So what Rigveda, Ramayana, Mahabharata say about river Saraswati, quadrangulation of river Saraswati evidence. And out of these 3, 4, and 5, I'm going to do it together. So it's not like first I just discuss geology and then Rigveda. No, when appropriate, I'll bring it together and do the quadrangulation of it, because that's how the effective way to do it. So Sattva, Rajatama. So if I have to draw this Sattva, Sattvic, the goodness, is this factual, truthful, in search of a truth. That Sat word also is there. Truth can wait, it is used to it. Like last 300 years, the Indology has destroyed Indian civilization. And the Indians are so much brainwashed, 5+ generations, that even when now with the social media, YouTube, the knowledge is available, still they will just be so lazy. I'm talking of those who are lazy. I'm not talking of those who are very active and wonderfully doing their own abhyas and tapasya. But majority are still into a very lazy world. Hey, but I read somewhere. No, not stop that BS. Just get to studying Abhyasa and Swadhyaya. Truth can wait, but because it's used to it, but it is for you to figure it out. Truth doesn't care whether you understand it or not. It is your responsibility. That's a Sattvic mode. The second one is a Rajasic mode. It's a mixed one where people may have something in their mind. They may be attached to a certain viewpoint, whether it's a true or false. And then they may try to justify it by finding only selective evidence which supports them. And here, actually, I'm going to show you what a disaster that is. Okay, we'll not go into this list right now. So intention is right. Even the efforts, some of the efforts are very good, but unfortunately, it's not pure. It's not taking you to the desired destination. Okay, I mean, if people truly know, Aditya what these people in this, I'm not talking any individuals, but the kind of research that happens in this middle justificatory space. I mean, anyone with the truth will eat these particular research claims raw for breakfast. Okay, only their saving grace is that many people are so lazy that they don't call them out. Then the third one is the tamasic one. That is what we discussed last time, and it's about mischief. It's about fraud, doing a fraud in the daylight. Okay, so Saraswati, goddess or river. Now, I would have never thought I need to explain it, but again, as I said, our 5 generations are so deracinated that I could be sometime giving a talk, Aditya ji, like this happens in a face-to-face talk. I might be talking for 30 minutes on Saraswati. And all the time they're just thinking of, I'm talking of a goddess Saraswati, like a murti and some puja and something like this. What is this going on? Why are you talking about a river? Okay. So it has come down to that, the deification of Saraswati river into goddess. Okay, and vice versa, you can say. People can't even distinguish. I mean, this is a good definition of a Kali Yuga. that's how we have come down to. So just to clarify this, but also to explain how deep in the civilization of India, the greater India, but also the world, is this Saraswati. The picture at the top left, I'll start from the top, go across the row. This is the statue of Murti of a Saraswati at the Dhaka University in Bangladesh. In the middle at the top, what you see is again a Murti of Saraswati at the Indonesian embassy in Washington, D.C. The one at the top right-hand corner, you see is a Murti of Saraswati in Japan. They have slightly different names. Like, for example, the one bottom here, so the second row, this is again Saraswati. They call it Taratudi. This is in Myanmar, in Burma, the old Brahmadesh. Okay, so that's where that Saraswati is. This is Saraswati that many Indians can quickly relate to on the Saraswati Puja and all day. The Saraswati is a Vak Devata, the goddess for the intellect, and we'll not go into that today. Why that is so? Because that's the foundation of a civilization. Indian civilization, and therefore the world civilization. And the last one you see is this Saraswati Mandir in Bali, Indonesia. So that is there. But what I am talking today is the river Saraswati, that started in the high mountains and was flowing all the way to the ocean for thousands and thousands of years. And I just covered briefly how long was that in the part 1. So quickly, the anti-India narrative, anything but the truth, that's their principle. Okay, that's a tamasic thing. Now, this is what happens. If you go to Rigveda, And I'll tell you why it is important to bring the narrative. Shruti, Smruti, Pratyaksha, Anuman. This is the quadrangulation of the four. This is the Sukta, I mean, this is the Rucha from Mandala 10 of Rigveda, Nadi Sukta. Imam me Gange, Yamune, Saraswati, Shutudri, Stomam, Sachata, Parushnya. There are names of 19 rivers. Okay. And just notice the sequence. Nothing is just given in a casual way. Right from starting in the southeast direction, like a Ganga, Yamuna, then in between the Saraswati before Shutudri, where you see the cemetery H. Right now it's a desert, okay? Not much there. No river, no big river flowing there. But there was a time when there was Saraswati flowing through this. And it goes through Vipas, Parushni, Akshini, Vitasta, Sushoma, Sindhu, Komal, Kubha. All these rivers are mentioned. Okay, some of the names are slightly different, like a Jhelum and Ravi and so on. Even when this such a solid evidence exists, geographical and also literary, like the whole academic Indology gang will ask the question, could this river somewhere in Iran be Saraswati? Okay, that is the fraud I'm talking about. And sometimes Adityaji, people will say, yeah, we know some people are vicious in nature and they do it. Why bother? Just do our own thing. Of course, we should do the right thing. We shouldn't be worried about them. But why bother is a wrong question. We must bring out this fraud. We must educate people on the fraud, because when that is not done, this is what happens. Today, if anyone wants to know about anything, what do people do? It's very unfortunate, because in some cases it works fine, like some for basic information, Wikipedia will just give you correct information. But I can tell you, for anything on the Indian civilization, anything on the ancient civilization, not just Indian civilization, you can go to South American civilization, you can go to Native American civilization, even the ancient civilizations of Europe, including Greece. Okay, they will not give the correct information. They will give extremely biased information, which, by the way, there is another word, and another fraud is called a scholarly consensus. And we'll talk about scholarly consensus. But if you don't stop these guys, if you don't expose their fraud, that information comes as like a distilled wisdom on things like Wikipedia. It's agenda driven, it's fakery, it's dogma, it's fraud. Now, who are some of these members of this vicious gang? As far as the Indian civilization is concerned, these are some of the faces that you are seeing. Wendy Donnie in the top, Sheldon Pollock, Professor Michael Witzel at Harvard, Robert Goldman, and Diana Eck. Now, these are not the only one. I'm just showing you that as an illustrative list of folks. Now, is this only limited to these people, or are these only people to blame? Absolutely not. But these guys have used their position in a mischievous way and created a havoc. Okay. Now they have their lackeys in India. That's how they are groomed right from the beginning. They're brought to these so-called famous universities here or in Europe. They are given the degrees, they are brainwashed, or they find people who can be brainwashed. That is also goes into it, or who will be so impressed with some award or something, and they feel so good about themselves because they have a very low self-confidence to begin with. And then they are sent back, in India in this case, but in other cases to the different countries, to honestly destroy those countries. That's what is happening. Those of you, if you're interested, do read this paper, River Saraswati, A Defense of Common Sense by Irfan Habib. Now I assume that you have a Sattvic intellect, because otherwise you will just also go and say, oh yeah, it sounds all good. No, it is a disaster. It is actually, the title, I liked it because a defense of common sense. And it's a laughable that the person is using the word common sense in this, and everything he is saying has everything else except common sense. Okay, except common sense, except science, except logic. There are others. He's not alone. Romila Thapar. Deliberately, I pulled something from the Wikipedia, like awards and all that. Now, a common man, in a very naive sense, they look at these awards and say, oh, this person must be very knowledgeable, very important. Well, no, these guys lack integrity. They have learned the things, okay? Learn the act of polemics, learn the act of rhetoric, and they will use it to just push their agenda the way they like, okay? Or just extension of the academia. I mean, Professor R.A. Sharma is no longer there. He passed away a few years ago, many years ago. But he also, like, these all guys are trained, where? I mean, if you just the two pictures I showed, Oxford, University of London, this R.A. Sharma also University of London, like given the awards and all that and sent in India to do the mischief. That's why the India's textbooks are a disaster, especially on the history and the civilizational studies. And then we have these people. If you know the faces, great. If not, it's worth forgetting. That's fine. But just be aware. Now, why do I show this? Aditya ji, what happens? Like, you carry many programs, like the mantra chanting and reading and whatnot. Many of the Indian moms, and this applies to all the world moms, but they are so caring about their children. They want to learn about their culture or Indian culture and yoga and whatnot, of Bhagavad Gita and of Upanishad. And they will very naively, not realizing, will pick the books written by likes of these individuals. It's a disaster par excellence, but I know many well-meaning mothers buying these books of someone like Rupa Pai, not to confuse with Rupa Bhattiji, by the way, one of our researchers here, will just buy these books. And I said, why are people buying it? I just actually looked at it. I had to buy it, by the way. But I said, what nonsense it is filled with. Now, interestingly, see, there is one at the bottom is a Tony Joseph, who has written a lot of rubbish related to Aryan invasion, saying that Aryan invasion happened and all that kind of thing. So I asked him for an open debate. And what is funny is this guy is a journalist, and it doesn't matter what background he comes from, because I don't put emphasis on the background. Truth is a truth. Let's discuss in a very healthy and respectful way. But when I did this, and he knows that he will not win the debate, he didn't want to participate. But now I put him on the spot in a social media like Twitter, and he comes back and he says, when you publish, meaning when I publish something in a peer-reviewed journals, well, two problems with that. First thing, I don't have a peers yet, so where comes the question of me publishing in a peer-reviewed journal. But the second one is actually three. The second one is a revolutionary research doesn't easily go into peer-reviewed journals, because the job of peer-reviewed journals is like a security, guys, just to keep everything intact and not let it break, even when it needs to be broken. The third point is he himself has not published anything in the peer-reviewed journals, to the best of my knowledge, but he's asking me to publish something in peer-reviewed journals before he will debate with me. Well, he doesn't understand that the debate is voluntary in nature. He has said something, I'm questioning it. If he wants to do it, then only we do it. It's not like we have to do it. I mean, I'm not eager to do a debate with him. I just offered him, but he was thinking like he's something special. Never mind. That's why I'm showing these people. Now, let's talk about the academia. Nassim Nicholas Taleb, a famous quote, if you have read it, if you have heard it, great. Academia is to knowledge what prostitution is to love, close enough on the surface, but to the non-sucker, not exactly the same thing. Now, when I post this quote in social media, like some of the typical comments I get are like, Nilesh ji, but these are very strong words. And Aditya ji, of course, sometimes I write it there, but people tell me in person also, or on the phone when we are talking, they say, oh, but those are very strong words. And my response is not strong enough. The kind of havoc that has been done, especially in the humanities, Indology, is just unforgivable, unforgivable. Okay. Now, some people, we are talking to the academia, like, to the students, researchers, and professors. Here is the thing. I mean, I'm in academia. I was in academia. I am in academia. Now, those people who are in academia and a very high self-esteem, and those people who are doing original research, they never get offended by this. In fact, Nassim Nicholas Taleb once added something to this quote. When people said, but come on, that's not true for every academic. And so just as a humor, he actually added something, and that's also worth quoting. He said, but some people say not every academic is just, like there for this. Some academics actually do very good original research. And that is a fact. So therefore, this Nassim very humorously says, well, but then the clients are also known to fall in love with the prostitutes, or prostitutes are known to fall in love with the clients. Okay, occasionally it does happen. So those are exceptions rather than the rule. But let's move on. Now, one wonders, what does this cause? It used to frustrate me beyond, I mean, with no limits. And I said, why? It's so simple. Why is it that people don't understand? Well, Krishna actually gave me the answer. Bhagavad Gita, he says, Adharmam dharmam itiya manyate tamasavruta sarvarthan viparitamscha buddhi sa partha tamasi. That viparita is important. One that is dharma, dharmic, they consider it adharmic. Adharmic, they consider it dharmic. And anything, any truthful thing, sat, they take sarvarthan viparitamsha, they turn it through 180-degree opposite. Okay, that's how they see it. If it's a light, they think it's a dark. If it's a dark, they think it's a light. Okay, that is a intellect of a tamasic kind. Okay, a fraudulent intellect of a very low kind. That's why it happens. Pro Saraswati narrative, that is the mixed bag, the sort of the Rajasic narrative in between. Let us understand what it is. Okay, so it does produce a lot of good. Don't get me wrong. And frankly, you see, these are the mistakes that all of us can do. Even the tamasic kind also we can do. Sometimes we may not be thinking right, and we will draw a conclusion which is actually 180-degree opposite. So I'm not saying that it won't happen to me, or it won't happen to Aditya or it won't happen to any one of us. But when we realize, it's an onus on us to acknowledge that error. Okay, and that's when majority will not able to do it because of their strong attachment to their ego. Okay, so even anyone can fall into that first category. That is possible, but important is to recognize when that happens. Now here also the Rajasic is a mixed bag. What happens here? Yaya dharmam adharmam cha karyam chakaryam evacha ayathavat prajanati buddhi sa partha tamasi. The important word is ayathavat. Okay, prajanati means to understand, yathavat meaning understand it properly. It is not saying it is everything wrong. Krishna is not saying that, but he's saying ayathavat, not perfectly. Okay, it's a mixed bag. Directionally, it may understand, but not with a complete precision, not to the extent it is required. So some things could be right, some things drawn could be correct, but other things could be wrong. And unfortunately, therefore, it's a mixed package. Just to give you an example, like suppose you are eating ice cream, right? And so while you are eating ice cream, a small but significant block falls off, into the dirt. Now, if you lift it and you mix it with the ice cream that you are eating, the whole ice cream was not bad, but now you have got, because you mixed it, the whole ice cream is a bad one. It's not edible ice cream anymore. That is what these Rajasic tendencies do. Let's look at this example. Now, all of us fall into this in some way, so it's not to point anyone. In fact, all of these people that I'm showing you have done brilliant work. Okay, for example, in the top, let's start with the top. That's Henry Paul Frankfurt, okay, from France, has done phenomenal research related to Saraswati. Then this is going back 1992. Or the lady next to that is Mary Agnes Corti, her PhD thesis, but also her lot of research work, wonderful research work related to Saraswati going back to 1986. We'll just go along the row. Then the next one in a black and white, their picture is Padma Shri Haribhau Wakankar, or Vishnu Sridhar Wakankar, his name, but he was called Haribhau. Something what he did some 70 plus years is just fascinating. Many times we are overwhelmed by the sophistication of technology and the smartphones. And, if the internet goes down, we say, what can I do? Because internet is not working. When much of the sophisticated technology either did not exist or was not easily accessible, this individual and a small party, actually, they walked the dry bed of river Saraswati, starting with Gujarat, trying to find out the path of river Saraswati or multiple paths of river Saraswati, and did a tremendous job. So powerful job, so impressive job, that now when we look at the Landsat imagery and many other sophisticated techniques, what essentially people use the maps produced by him to track along that, and actually the modern techniques are validating what his findings are made 70 years ago. Such a fascinating individual. Okay, then let's go there a couple more. So Michel Danino, like number of you might have read the book Lost River. If you have not, do consider reading that book, The Lost River. Okay, it's on Saraswati because now it doesn't exist. And what he has done, especially a noteworthy thing, is what he has shown is the river that became extinct like a 6,000 plus years ago. It is still kept very fresh in the common memory of Indian folks, even down to the villages. I mean, even when the path is dry for 6,000 plus years, possibly 10,000 plus years, possibly 15,000 plus years, because in some portions it's not flowing for even 10,000 and 15,000 years. Even then, in the village psyche, in the social psyche, in the civilizational psyche, the memory of that grand river is still there. And how it still persisted when Indologists came to India and they were doing the surveys is very nicely captured by him in that book. Many of you would know Major General G.D. Bakshiji. He recently wrote a book on Saraswati civilization. And again, he has done a decent job of capturing the evidence of different kinds, not just river, but related to Sindhu Saraswati civilization and archaeological finds and whatnot into his book. The second row, if we come, that's Padma Bhushan Khadak Singh Waldia, Professor Khadak Singh Waldia, a geologist. He passed away, unfortunately, a year ago or so. By the way, I had a chance of meeting most of these individuals, and if I did not meet, like Wakankarja, I did not eat, and Frankfurt or Kurtiji, I haven't not met. But many others I have met, and also I have extensively communicated with them, through different medias before. So Waldiaji, I mean, I was with him at the Saraswati conference a few years ago. Again, done a phenomenal research. Okay, then Liu Josan, okay, again has done research into that field. Then we have Peter Clift, very, very critical, very important research. Now he used to be in the UK. I mean, that's where he's from. Now he's in United States at Louisiana State University, I think. And many of you would also know Dr. Srinivas Kalyan Ramanji. Something marvelous that he has done. In the Sindhu Saraswati civilizational, they found these different tablets. Aditiji, if you know, like the seals, and they have the picture, and usually is something in the script, Sindhu Saraswati script, which has been deciphered by many people are attempting. Someone like my friend Sue Sullivan has done tremendous job. I think she has done the best job among all the individuals who have tried to decipher the Indus Valley script. But what Srinivas Kalyanaramanji did is, if you go back, like Professor Parpola from University of Helsinki in Finland, he had collected and made a very nice catalog of about, I would say, 4,000 seals. These all Sindhu Saraswati seals. What Srinivas Kalyanaramanji did is he went after any additional seals that are continued to be found and went through the painstaking effort of cataloging them. So actually now we have, I don't know what the right number is, but possibly like close to 8,000 seals. And thanks to the work of Srinivas Kalyanaramanji. Okay, now these people have worked on the Saraswati in many different contexts, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly, but so their contribution is there. Okay, now what happens, I talked about the mixed bag. So that contribution is great. Now, against the actual evidence, the Pratyaksha Anumana, the Indian Darshana traditions demand, or this is the method of science, Pratyaksha Anumana, the empirical, and then drawing the inferences in the context of background knowledge, in the context of a theory, versus this whole academic fraud, I would like to say, of scholarly consensus. Now, can there be a room for scholarly consensus? Can there be a use for it? Of course, there can be. But not when it is driven by agenda, not when they think it's like electing a political leader, just by voting. No, that's not how science works. Okay, that's not how this thing works. So quickly to give you a summary of a factual Saraswati research based on Pratyaksha Anumana in a scientific way, okay, empirical and inference. River Saraswati is the grand river. Civilizational history, now based on the evidence, 200 plus thousand years. Yamuna separates 50,000 years ago. Shutudri separates 13,000 BCE. Intensification of monsoon between 7,000 to 4,500 BCE. From high Himalayas to the ocean, it was flowing more definitely from 172,000 plus years to 22,000 BC. But we may say, well, it might be flowing up to 10,000 BCE. And I'll tell you why that 10,000 BCE. Because we have evidence to show that definitely it was not meeting the ocean in the last 10,000 plus years. So definitely it was not there. Therefore, I put this. And then the drying of river began around 4,500 BC, quickly dried. Against this, guys, pay attention. What do we see from the scholarly consensus? And Aditya, depending on the time after this, we can stop for today. And then we will do some more stuff maybe next time, but you tell me. But let me finish this first. Now, against this, the scholarly consensus, the Grand River, yeah, they agree. Now, I'm not counting there the Indology, humanities scholars, okay? No, because they, remember I showed you the Tamasic one? They don't think even the Saraswati exists. Or if it exists, it has to be only in Iran. And why? Because they are so fearful about the antiquity, the sophistication, and the sophistication in science, technology, philosophy, whatever thing you want to name, the culture of Indian civilization. Why they are fearful? It is something for you to investigate. Okay. But so River Saraswati, the Grand River, when I say scholarly consensus, I would say mostly it is the consensus of either a pro-India researchers or the researchers who work in hard science. They may not have anything, any affection for India, but they don't have any hate either. They will just go where the evidence takes them. They don't necessarily understand the ancient Indian narratives, but they do understand the pure empirical geology, geochemistry, geophysics, morphodynamics of rivers, climatology, oceanography, that kind of research. And their conclusions are taking us to what I already showed you under Pratyaksha Anumana. So Grand River, they both kind of agree. Civilization history, what a joke. Most of the pro-Indic researchers, many of them in India, by the way, but they don't have to be in India, are also stuck because, you know, they're still swallowing the blue pill of last 300 years of Indology. You know, the Indology that taught that the earth came into being only 4,000 BCE, and therefore the whole civilization can only happen after 4,000 BCE. And therefore, now when they make a claim for Indian civilization for 10,000 years, they feel so good about themselves, saying, oh, wow, come on, I have taken this out of this nonsense of Aryan invasion, and now I'm talking 3,000 BC and 4,000 BC and 5,000 BC and 6,000 BC and 7,000 BC. Guys, this is good. No, this is not good, not because it doesn't go back in too many thousand years, because this is not based on empirical evidence. This is based on a rhetoric, and I'm going to show that, if not today, maybe the next time. But let's see what other scholarly consensus has led to. Now, just guys, for a second, and if you feel this is like a drastic difference, and he says, my God, one of the two has to be wrong and very wrong, then I would encourage you to start reading, start studying the research papers related to River Saraswati, Yamuna, and Satology. The scholarly consensus gang claims to this day that Yamuna separated from Saraswati around 2700 BC. Actually, they give a date which is after 2700 BC. And I said, my God, what the world has come down to. I mean, can the world be so truly dumb? I don't know the answer to that. I don't want to know the answer to that. Well, Shatudri separates again 2700 BC. Actually, Adityaji, I'm giving them a benefit of doubt. They talk about some event, and when we get time, either today or next time, we will go into that. This is a hypothetical event in their mind. And just because they think in their mind, therefore they think it is happening in the real world. There is no evidence. There is a zero evidence. There is a zilch evidence for that claim of something happening to this changing of the paths of the rivers for Shatudri as well as Yamuna in 2700 BC. Absolutely no evidence, the kind of claims they are making. But that's the claim they're making. I call it scholarly consensus. That's the problem of scholarly consensus. In some cases, it can be useful, it can be good. In this particular case, in the context of River Saraswati, now, you know, some people feel, they tell me, Nilesh, at least they're accepting the existence of Saraswati in comparison to the other Tamasic gang I told you, who don't even accept Saraswati. And my point is, well, yeah, I mean, that's a valid point. But how far down, what kind of degradation we have to go through to even feel that someone who accepts the existence of Saraswati, we say, oh, well, thank God. Thank you so much that you accept the existence of Saraswati. No, we don't have to depend on somebody's acceptance, some individual's acceptance. And I'll tell you what Adi Shankaracharya says about it. You will not find a more knowledgeable person, in the written or unwritten world that is comparable to Adi Shankaracharya. Intensification of monsoon, they agree. Okay, so this is interesting. But therefore, Aditya, what happens is they, in a very foolish fashion, think that the timing of the entire Rigveda is that 7,000 BC to 4,500 BC. Okay, that is the problem. Well, yes, it is also part of a period of Rigveda, but it is the period of the last portions of Rigveda. That is when Vyasadeva recasted, re-edited, and put it in an edited form, the Rigveda. So some references from that time actually do come. And I don't know if we will have a time today. Actually, we are almost close to 1 hour. But next time we will consider it. Definitely. So there, at least the both parties agree, you can say. The evidence agrees and the scholarly consensus also agrees. But the confusion is that whereas the Rigveda has to go back in deep antiquity because there is evidence for it, the scholarly consensus is stuck in the Rigveda into that 7,000 BC to 4,500 BC. And my point is, the last portion of the Rigveda, especially editing, recasting, did happen around the Mahabharata time because it was done by the Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, okay, 5561 BC, 6th millennium BC. So that's correct. But much of the Rigveda, the events described in Rigveda, the geography described in Rigveda, the rivers and rivers condition described in Rigveda, they all go beyond 22,000 BC, not here. Okay. And so therefore, because they are stuck on that agenda, therefore, they claim the Saraswati of Rigveda, Giribhya Samudra, going from high mountains all the way to the ocean also happened during this time. There is evidence to show that this did not happen. In this time period, Saraswati did have a copious quantity of waters in some places, but it did not meet the sea as shown based on the paleo channels and based on the geology, geophysics, geochemistry, and morphodynamics research. Okay, so that's just, guys, be aware of scholarly consensus. It can be a starting point for your research. It is not the conclusive point of research. Conclusion should only come from pratyaksha anumana plus shruti and smriti. Okay, and shruti, smriti, and itihasa, aitiya. And they say drying of Saraswati begins 1900 BC. That's also wrong. Actually, drying of Saraswati definitely happened, ended by 1900 BC. It definitely started 4500 BC. So therefore, I just mentioned Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya says this: Jnanam na purusha tantram kintu vastu tantram. Okay. Now, sometimes you trust the guru, sometimes you trust the authority, but when it makes sense and when you have no other way to find the truth. If you want to know the truth of reincarnation, like what happens to us after we die, okay, there are some experiments that are done, and we get some snippets, like Many Life, Many Masters by Brian Weiss, or this professor at Virginia University, and the Indian Patanjali Yoga Sutra. But unless you practice through that, unless you get your own experience, you might have to rely on other people's experiences. In those cases, it's perfectly fine. In fact, Adi Shankaracharya uses that. If you want to know about Atma, like somebody asked him, well, I don't believe in Atma, he told Shankaracharya. And essentially, Shankaracharya said, yeah, that's fine. The very fact you are negating that the Atma doesn't exist, you don't have Atma, or you don't believe in Atma, that itself proves that Atma exists. If you accept Atma exists, Atma exists. If you reject or deny that Atma does not exist, then that itself proves that Atma existed. This is that your consciousness, that is Atma. It's a very simple definition. You try to pinpoint it or try to search in your body, you will not find it. Metaphorically speaking, suppose you are reading a book and somebody says, hey, how far you are into the book? And the person says, I'm halfway through. Or the person might say, I'm on the page 175. It's a 200-page book. I'm on the page 175. Now, if you literally take this and go to that book and start looking on, go to page 175 and see if you can find your friend there. No, you won't find the friend there. It is in the consciousness the person is there. So consciousness, Bhagavad Krishna says, you can discuss in 10 different ways. Actually, learned people do discuss it and still they are always remain puzzled. Okay. So, but in that case, you can take the help of authority. You can take the help of a guru. But otherwise, for ordinary things, so things that we can actually find empirical evidence, we can see with our eyes, we can perceive with our senses. Jnanam na Purushatantram. The Purushatantram is that individual authority fallacy. Purushatantram is the scholarly consensus. It says no, it won't work. That's not how the knowledge comes into being. That's not how epistemological foundation works. Epistemological foundation is by Vastu Tantram. You go to that particular thing. In this case, River Saraswati's path, River Saraswati's descriptions, empirical data, doing the scientific analysis and analyze it for yourself. So Aditya, because we did almost hour, I will stop here. And maybe next time we will do the factual narrative. And very, very interesting, by the way. I hope interesting. I'm finding it interesting. Therefore, I'm saying very interesting. People may or may not find it that way, but based on the surveys that people are doing, what I hear on Satology, like many people write to me saying, I watched this on Satology and it was very fascinating. So we went over an hour, so my apologies, but we can stop for today.
Yeah. So one of the things that you mentioned about Indology, and it's a very dangerous term today, because the Indology, a person who has no good intentions is also trying to speak about Indology, which is a very common thing, which you showed all the pictures of those people. And there are some people who, in the name of Indology, spread fakery. And the biggest culprit, is the saying is that if somebody slaps you once, that person's fault. He slaps you twice, it's your fault now. So Indian historical, like I was talking about Indian Council of History today morning, and it is their job to analyze all different scholars who are working on it now. And most of those scholars are not in the university system because of the problem of peer review or scholarly consensus.
Yes.
Because the scholarly consensus has become an unscholarly consensus to a large extent.
Yeah, it's a fraud in the daylight. Most cases. In some cases, as I will say, that scholarly consensus also has a value, right? Sometimes we don't have enough knowledge, and like a military exercise, should we attack? Everyone will weigh in their opinion. Finally, we make the decision and we go, not knowing, right? Same thing with like a pandemic and something like this. But most of the time, it is a fraud in the daylight, broad daylight.
Yeah, so the biggest problem comes in, like, most of the good research is being done outside the academic circles now, because of the interest. We always say that bhakto si mein sakha cheti, says people who are devoted to this topic, for them it's not about them. Most of us don't get paid for it. You don't get paid for it, I don't get paid for it, anyone else doesn't get paid for it. But we do it out of our own curiosity, because we see that what is being presented to young minds is different than what is the proof actually on the ground.
Yes.
And so the Indian Council of Research, if they are watching, anyone is watching, they need to now set up bodies within the universities to create an external inputs now, free inputs, and then weigh them on merit. But please stay away from peer review, because we don't recognize those peers.
Yeah,
Peers is a British word.
Right. Just couple of points I will add. First thing is, all the revolutionary original research always came from individuals who were not directly related to academia, or sometimes they may be related to the academia, but they were not directly into that field. This is also the argument being used. Like, people will ask me, "Oh, are you a historian?" I say, "What the hell that means?" What do you mean? Like, look at my research, look at my evidence, look at the thing, and tell me where it is wrong. So they will go by the labels. That is a very typical authority fallacy. And Nayadharshana says such people should be rebuked. They should be removed from the debate and declared as defeated. That's one. The second aspect, is like, I understand your intention, Aditya ji, like you're saying, say someone like ICHR, ICIR, or whoever, those different organizations, they should also find a framework to get these research, non-academia folks doing the real research, the original research. So 2 points. First thing, the original research indeed happened by the mavericks, like the Copernicus, and even the Western world that people know the names, Galileo and Kepler and Einstein, Newton, they were mavericks of a kind. Edward Jenner, now we look at it, but he was criticized like you won't imagine in Western Europe when he came up with the vaccination and that. And the second part is the other thing that I don't know, only Bhagwan can solve this problem, is that you're saying, like, so for example, like people like me or people like you and many other researchers, Rupa Bhattiji, and there are many others. I mean, she's my very good friend. We work together. So I just say that name. These people, if we can get a support, then we will able to do a lot more. Okay. But the word of caution I would also say is that sometimes the people who go, they get paid and they go into academia, then they stop doing anything or they
That's
don't
right.
do anything.
Right.
So I'm saying, even when these people who are doing original research should be supported, the likes of me, the people who are supporting should also demand, like, there is a output based support, like say, hey, we will take care of your yoga kshema, annavastra nivara kind of thing. But here is just like you have produced the work, what can you do, what can you do to the civilizational studies? So no matter who is doing it, I think it should be output based research. That is also what is required. Because I always wonder, in the university, there's so many, even in Indian universities, so many professors, so much money has been spent on them, and hardly anything original comes, especially in the humanities area. Some technology, like, a lot of good things are happening, they could be better. But humanities, I mean, it's just a rubbish. I downloaded many PhD thesis, when our Smriti Irani ji made it online, like the theses were scanned. And so I downloaded like 100, 200 theses. And what a garbage and rubbish that was. And I'm being very polite and very euphemistic about what I am saying. So on that, I will stop with my apologies.
No, no, you said it rightly, because it's a peer pressure, and the pressure of getting a Western accreditation or somebody existing accreditation, which is the one which is stopping the real research. And sometimes the Sanskrit shlokas are so clear. Like if it is not clear, then there's another reference to that, or
Hmm.
before the reference is there. Like in Bhagavad Gita, if it is not clear to you, one shloka, read two, one before, two after. Everything is clear.
Yes,
The
yes,
context comes into play. But even that process of reading is also not discussed. There is a
correct.
process in everything involved. Like if you eat with the right hand, you put it. If you're eating Indian way and then put in your mouth, there's a process involved.
Yeah,
You cannot do like this.
yeah,
It's not going to reach you. It's going to the ears now.
yeah.
So we have to follow a process, and it's a remarkable presentation. I couldn't even move my eyes and ears off what you were showing.
We have to do one more part on this one,
Third
okay? The
one.
real stuff,
The first
it will
part will
be
be out, I think, the next 2 days,
okay.
and then the second part, and then we'll try to club it together so they're all released in sequence.
Sure,
So,
sure. Yeah.
so thank you, viewers, for watching, and it's a large crowd today. And I know you all of Nilesh Oak's fans. And do one thing: go to the YouTube, and if you have any questions, write over there, because Nilesh himself directly answers those questions
And
sometimes.
one more thing, if I can add quickly, Aditya, because somebody in the YouTube asked that point, and then I made a comment to you on the YouTube. Of course, we can talk here. Is if they add the questions, we can select the questions, and something what you and me can do in this session is me talking about some subject, and that I will continue to do. But we can do the question answer. Like you can read their questions, and I can answer, and we can do that, and it can be
Yes.
more interactive, more entertaining.
Yeah, one of these days we'll also plan to do a live show where me and Nilesh will talk on all these different topics. So you can ask any question there. But thank you all for staying back, and I know you loved it. And I can see nobody has left. In fact, the numbers have increased now. And for those who are watching on the YouTube, do subscribe and ask questions. Sattology is all there to debunk mythology. And if anyone wants to write an articles, you can write to sattology.org. We have to build a separate database than Wikipedia, because Wikipedia is not the authoritative source. Everyone is welcome to write. Just create your login and start writing. Thank you and namaste.
Namaskar.